Should Price's losing playoff record really matter, and which Ranger is giving Habs fans the worst nightmares? It's playoff time, and this is Hockey Inside Out. I'm Adam Susser, coming to you from the Gazette in downtown Montreal with Stu Cowan and Jack Todd. And joining us for the first time is Marc Dumont from Habs Eye on the Prize. Thanks for joining us, Marc.
Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Okay, here's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. Number 1, should Carey Price's losing career playoff record be a concern? Number 2, who is the Rangers' most dangerous player? Number 3, will Artturi Lehkonen be able to handle the playoff pressure? Number 4 is our HIO viewer question of the week, which asks if we'll see Mikhail Sergachev during the playoffs. And number 5, what Habs player will be the biggest surprise in the postseason? Let's start the show. Carey Price is entering the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs an Olympic gold medalist, multiple NHL award recipient, and frankly, at this point in his career, a weathered veteran who has not won a Stanley Cup. Does the fact that Price has a losing record in the playoffs really matter?
Well, he's 23 and 27 in the playoffs, but a lot of that has to go back to his early days in the NHL, and he's a different goalie and a different person now than he is then. So I would say no, you have to look at his current performance and his current stats a lot more than that.
Yeah, there was his first 6 years in the league and his last 4 are very different. The first 6, very inconsistent. The last 4 just absolutely shut down terrific. I'm not the least bit concerned about him.
Yeah, and it's a team-specific stat, right? So the Habs of 6 years ago are much different than the Habs of now. But the one factor I would look at that it matters is that I'm sure Carey Price wants to have a winning record in the playoffs. So it might be a motivational factor, but I don't see it as a negative. The only thing I could see is Carey Price wanting to prove that he's better than his record indicates.
And he's grown on and off the ice since he first came to Montreal. I mean, he was a young kid from a little small town in BC, thrown into the spotlight here in Montreal. He had some growing up to do on and off the ice.
I talked to him after his first practice here, and he kept going on and on about how hard they had to work. He couldn't believe it. I thought, my God, how did you get to this level without knowing that?
Natural ability.
That was him, kind of lackadaisical kid who had to, took him a while to figure it out, but...
Yeah, now he seems to be focused. He even lost those extra pounds that when he was first playing in the playoffs, he was up to about 250. He was a big goalie, so he's focused now. And really, I don't think he's worrying about his record that much. But he does want to win, so I expect Carey Price to have a dominant playoff series for the Montreal Canadiens.
And he's in playoff mode too. When he met the media on Monday at practice, I think Arpan Basser from NHL.com counted the words. I think it was 77 words he used to answer about 13 questions. So he's focused right now heading into the playoffs.
Okay. So the Habs are playing the Rangers. I'm not being facetious when I ask this question, but who is the scariest and most dangerous Ranger out there against the Habs this playoff?
Easy.
I know who you're going to say. And he's going to say Chris Kreider, right? I mean, but not just because he's a big guy. It's because he scores goals.
Yeah.
He's got 28 goals, and he's really, the Rangers offense goes through them. So the key matchup for these playoffs will be Shea Weber shutting down Chris Kreider, and I think we'll see, especially home ice advantage, we'll see Claude Julien use Weber to box out Kreider. If you look at his heat map, he scores right around the goalie, and he's not going to stop crashing that net, so the Habs have to do a good job defending.
He's a big, strong guy who can skate, and I still say when he crashed into Price a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess it was, and hurt his knee, I don't think it was an intentional thing. I think he was going hard to the net, lost his balance, and crashed into it. I heard Michael Farber on the radio the other day saying that Price got Kreiderized, which is not a bad line. But you were mentioning Shea Weber, just before we came in there, you were talking about an interesting stat that Shea Weber has that maybe some people don't know.
He's one of the best defensemen when it comes to to not allowing goals on the ice. So right now, him and Andrei Markov, in terms of the defensemen that have played over 1,000 minutes, have allowed 28 and 29 goals respectively, and that's over 82 or 80 games, depending on how much they play. So you're looking at a pairing that does a fantastic job shutting down the opposition, and it's going to be key for Shea Weber to make sure that not only Price gets the support he needs, but with guys like Kreider coming in, you're going to have to watch guys like Zuccarello and Zibanejad, and there's just a plethora of Rangers offense. They've got depth.
I know last time it really seemed like the Rangers had a dozen interchangeable forwards. They were all 6'2". They could all skate. They could all score, and they just kept coming in waves. And you stop one, and another one is going to score. They're a tough team. I think a lot of Hab fans think, oh, this team is so good, and it is. It's a well-built for the playoffs team, but they're up And they shouldn't have to play the Rangers in the first round, by the way, except for our NHL Department of Stupid Rules. But
well, the other name, and some Habs fans might want to block their ears. Isn't Ryan McDonough? Yeah, the Scott Gomez deal will always be.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Going back to Shea Weber, he's been criticized a lot when he played with Nashville as sort of disappearing or downgrading his play in the playoffs. Do you think that'll be a problem this year?
Well, as we were saying earlier, the 82, he played 79 games, I think it was. I think the smartest thing the Canadiens did is that sort of lower body injury that kept him out the last 3 games. I'm sure he's banged up like all players are, and I think it was just a case of Shea, take the rest of the week off, get ready for the playoffs like the Habs used to do with Larry Robinson when they'd send him to Florida, take some time off. So I think he's fresh and ready to go, as fresh as somebody could be after the amount of minutes he played in 79 games.
When you look at how San Jose took advantage of him in the playoffs, one of the keys was that they were using speed to beat him on the outside, and they were really they weren't allowing Weber to get into his strong zone, which is pushing you up against the boards and basically shutting down the offensive rushes. So if the Canadiens, and under Claude Julien, they should be able to do it, can muddy up the neutral zone, slow down the pace, Shea Weber will be able to do his job quite well. And that was the problem in Nashville last year, is that the neutral zone was a highway, and Weber cars were just speeding right by him.
It'll be interesting to see with him and Markov together, combined, they're 69 years old. It'll be interesting to see as the playoffs go on how they hold up. Yes, how they hold up. That'll be something to keep an eye on.
Okay, Artturi Lehkonen is someone who's been pretty solid for having a rookie season. However, the playoffs are a completely different beast. How do you think the playoff pressure will affect him?
I think he's been very, very solid. And he led the Swedish league in the playoff scoring last year. So it's, I mean, it's a little bit apples and oranges, maybe comparing the Swedish league to playing in the Bell Center in the playoffs. But he's a kid who's way mature beyond his years. And I don't think it'll, I expect him to maybe even play better in the playoffs than he did in the regular season.
He doesn't shrink from anything, you know. He's got a little bit of sandpaper in him and a lot of skills. Great shot. No, I think he'll be fine.
We have to keep in mind he was playing pro when he was 16 in the Liga in Finland, and then he moved to Sweden to play against even better players. So this is all part of his plan. Artturi Lehkonen's been a professional for 6 years, even though he's a rookie in the NHL. Before he came over this year, he said, "I'm going to put on weight because I know in the playoffs in the NHL I'm going to get thrown around." Yeah. So he prepared for this, and he's just such a smart guy with so much experience for his age that I don't think he'll falter. If anything, I think he'll elevate his game, and we're going to see Claude Julien depend on him defensively. This is a coach's dream because he's so defensively responsible. So I expect really big things from Artturi Lehkonen.
I mean, I'm a parent, you're a parent, and imagine a 16-year-old son sending him to go play pro hockey with men. I think that says a lot about how mature the kid is on and off the ice. And his father was a hockey coach. Yeah. He grew up, so he's been taught the game. He's been a student of the game since he was a young boy, and it shows.
You guys talk about him like he was born a veteran.
Yeah, I think he was.
Well, that's a good line.
I wish Galchenyuk had a little bit of the brains that
I
he
always
has.
call him the 10-year veteran rookie. Because if you were to take away the stat sheet or any information, you say who here has been playing the NHL longest, most guys would point at Lehkonen and say, "Kid, that guy's a veteran." Even though he won't have to shave for the next 10 years, that guy's a veteran, right? So it's just the way he plays is so smart. Even when he wasn't scoring, fans weren't getting on his case because he was playing smart hockey, and that's he can predict where the play is going to be, and I really think once he puts all that together, you can tell he's still learning. But in a couple of years, the Habs will have he's already good, but I think he can get better.
Michel Therrien and Claude Julien are different coaches, but they agreed on actually a couple of things. One is that Artturi Lehkonen can play in any situation, and two is that Alex Galchenyuk can't play center.
And we have to give credit to Frölunda too for how they developed Lehkonen. They put a focus on defense, and that's Coach Ronberg and Lehkonen in Frölunda did a fantastic job with him. This is the same team that produced guys like Erik Karlsson, right? So Frölunda knows how to produce NHL hockey players.
And kudos to Marc Bergevin and the Habs management too, because they had to keep him, right? They couldn't send him to the AHL. He was either going back there or he was staying here, and they kept him here and they made the right decision.
Yeah, there's almost an aperçu in Europe now that they'd rather stay there than go to the AHL. Yeah. They'd rather not toil there. So that's what Frölunda does, and that's what Lehkonen did, and it turned out quite well for the Canadiens.
Okay, it's time for our HIO viewer question of the week. This week's HIO viewer question comes to us from Devin Nelson from Elliott, Maine. He's getting a mug. Devin wants to know, will we see the Canadiens prospect Mikhail Sergachev during the playoffs?
No. I don't. He's still with the Windsor Spitfires. They're eliminated from the OHL playoffs, but they're in the Memorial Cup as the home team, so he's still committed to that team. So unless there was some kind of maybe an emergency basis, but I don't think they can bring him up.
No, but one thing we should all be happy about is Sergachev's development. Right now, I don't think they necessarily need to bring him up to the NHL level, right? He still has some things to learn in OHL. It's better for him to dominate at that level than to raise the expectations. I think a lot of people are already penciling him into the lineup next year, so he still has some time to learn, and winning the Memorial Cup, although it's going to be a tough run, would obviously be a nice feather in his cap.
Yeah, I don't see him coming here. I think he's going to be a terrific addition when he gets here. But this defense, unless they have massive injuries, should be fine. And they're built to handle the shot blocking and all that crap. Which Sergachev, I think, is just going to be wonderful. I watched a bunch of clips of him the other day. Man, I don't remember seeing a defense more fluid along the blue line.
Yeah.
He just owns that blue line, and
he's a bit of a heavy hitter too. So he's got the physical side.
He's a big kid too.
Yeah. When I was the last time I saw him was against the 67s. I went to watch him, and I don't think there was a play where he wasn't involved in, good or bad. So he still has some giveaways.
Yeah.
And he's a guy who carries the puck a lot, so he will lose the puck once in a while. But keep an eye out on him. In my opinion, he's the only real blue chip prospect the Canadiens have right now.
The downside, though, with Windsor being the host team, is that he's now got a month where he's going to not play and then get thrown into the Memorial Cup tournament. So that's...
When I spoke to him after he got sent down from the Canadiens, he said, it did take me about 2 months to adjust. So he said the whole idea of going up and down is not necessarily that healthy for my psyche either. Once you hit your groove in the OHL, it's better to kind of stay there. And I know guys want to get into the big show, take the planes and all that, but for a player's development, it's not necessarily great to have him yo-yo up and down from junior to NHL.
Do you think we'll be seeing a lot more of him next season?
I think so. I think with Nathan Beaulieu, it'll depend on what happens with Nathan Beaulieu this summer.
I thought he was going to get traded this summer already, like last summer.
And you figure Nathan Beaulieu is going to get traded this summer. That certainly seems that way, and Sergachev is a logical replacement to come in and take his spot.
Okay.
Yeah, I could see him in a third pairing role, but also maybe second power play. You know, get him. Don't throw him to the wolves. But and worst case, if he has to play another year out of the NHL, it's not a huge deal. The Canadiens aren't that desperate for a defenseman right now. Almost all their guys are signed next year. But like Stu says, if Beaulieu goes, then you need another puck-moving defenseman.
And he really wants to play in the NHL. I mean, every kid does. He really wants to.
But how rare is it to have a 19-year-old in your line? Unless you're...
especially a defenseman.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're, Columbus tends to throw their guys in young. But really, he's going to be good, and there's no rush with him, in my opinion.
Okay, so the playoffs are a time when heroes are born. Who do you think is going to be the biggest surprise for the Habs this year?
In the playoffs, you can't say he's a surprise, but he's a surprise based on the kind of season he had. I think Brendan Gallagher is going to be 100% Brendan Gallagher again.
Oh, yeah?
And I think that's going to be a huge factor.
Yeah, I talked with him the other day, and his hand, as I mentioned, you'd see him sometimes earlier in the season rubbing his hand after practice, and that he said his hand will never be what it was, but he's much more comfortable with it now. He says he's more accurate with his shot. He feels better. It was basically a case of learning how to play with a different hand, and it took time, and now he seems to have learned. So him and Lehkonen, we spoke about Lehkonen earlier, I think he could be a surprise for this team in the playoffs also.
One big change from every other Habs run in the last 5 years, I'd say the most surprising guy in this case will be Claude Julien. And I know that's a bit of a cheat answer here, but he can adjust. He can adapt to other people's strategies, other coaches' strategies. And we saw Terrien get outcoached fairly often in the playoffs. He had a set strategy that worked quite often, but once someone countered it, he had a hard time adapting to it.
Not a flexible coach.
Exactly. So Claude Julien might be able to adapt a little bit better, and I'm expecting him to outcoach his opponents.
The other guy I'm looking forward to watching is Andrew Shaw. I mean, we were after practice today, we were all talking with him about, his playoff experiences. Boy, you guys are really harping on this. You're putting pressure on me, and then you're sort of laughing about it. But the guy, he's 25 years old. He got 2 Stanley Cup rings. He knows what it's like. Dwight King, 2 Stanley Cup rings also. They're playing together with Lehkonen on a line. So that line will be interesting to watch throughout the series.
I'm going to go with Philip Deneau. I think that just the fact that if he maintains, that'll surprise a lot of people. I'm sick of hearing people say things like, how good can the Habs be if their first-line center is Philip Deneau? It's not like he's a 29-year-old that just suddenly had.
He was a first-round draft pick.
Exactly, first-round draft pick. He's a young kid. It's not like he's placed. He seems to make every line he's on better.
He's never played in an NHL playoff game, but he was part of the Black Aces in Chicago in 2015 when they went all the way to the final. So while he hasn't played, he's been around the atmosphere and has seen. And that's you can't teach that in a classroom. That's something he's lived the experience, even though he wasn't on the ice. He was part of the Black Blackhawks in the room at practice, so he knows he's witnessed what it takes.
And he knows his role with the Canadiens. It's either go and get the puck and send it to Radulov, or go put yourself in front of the net and they'll find you. You know, keep it simple. You're playing with two really good players. Don't try to go over and above and beyond. Just keep it simple. You already have a good line here.
Yeah, and he knows that. He knows that. He doesn't change. He doesn't change his game whether he's playing the fourth line or the first line. And Radulov and Pacioretty love playing with this guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is our show. We want to thank you all at home for tuning in. We want to thank the panel for showing up. Stu, Jack, and Mark, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section below and subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. We'll be back next Thursday. Thanks for watching, Habs fans.